Let's talk straight talk.
I can hear you talking.
Straight talk.
Did I hear you say? Did I hear you say?
Straight talk.
Did I hear you say? Did I hear you say?
Straight talk.
Talking straight. Did I hear you say?
Straight talk.
With Edna.
Straight talk.
We're talking straight.
Let's talk straight talk.
I can hear you talking.
Straight talk.
Talking straight. Did I hear you say?
Straight talk.
With Edna.
Straight talk.
We're talking straight. I can hear you talking.
Straight talk.
Talking straight. Did I hear you say straight talk? With Edna.
Straight talk.
I can hear you talking.
Straight talk.
Let's talk.
Let's talk. Good morning and welcome to Straight Talk Live. I'm your host, Edna Howell-Parrish. Good morning, good morning, good morning. The views and the opinions of our sponsors are not those of the hosts, the guests, or Cincinnati Digital Media. While we make every effort to ensure that the information we present is accurate, is true, we do welcome any comments, suggestions, questions, or corrections. This edition of Straight Talk Live is brought to you by RenewCommunityChurch.org, where you can learn how to graciously move away from negative people who bring down your positive energy. 11:45 a.m. this morning on YouTube, Renew Community Church live stream, and 11:45 a.m. on Facebook.com/Cincy Renew. Live today, the 9 steps to a happy life. Again, learn how you can graciously just move away from negative people who bring down your positive energy. Renew Community Church, plus get a free ebook and coaching live with life coach Charlie Winburn. You can learn the 9 steps to a happy life. In addition, learn how to graciously move away from those people that are negative and they try to bring down your positive energy. 11:45 this morning, YouTube, Renew Community Church live stream, and 11:45 on Facebook.com/Cincy, CINCI, Renew, free ebook and coaching live this morning with Charlie Winburn at renewcommunitychurch.org. And now back to Straight Talk Live with Edna Parrish. Before we get to our guest this morning, this is 3rd January coming up tomorrow. The United States honors the memory of the late Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., one of America's greatest civil rights activists who fought for racial equality for everyone, regardless of our skin color. The country celebrates with numerous marches and parades a national holiday. Students and many workers get the day off. I know I'll be off tomorrow. Are you off tomorrow? And due to COVID and the pandemic, a number of events are still going on. So now in Cincinnati, the Martin Luther King commemorative march begins 10:30 a.m. Monday morning in front of the National Underground Railroad Freedom Center, and it goes to Washington Park for an interfaith prayer service around 11:15 a.m. tomorrow. Again, kicking off at 10:30, leaving from National Underground Railroad Center, and then 11:15 at Washington Park. And then Metro is providing two buses for the motorcade, including the Rosa Parks bus, which honors the role that Rosa Parks played in desegregation of public transportation and in the civil rights movement. The keynote speaker tomorrow will be done online, virtual. It is Iris Rowley, community activist, and you can watch the celebration live stream at noon on the Martin Luther King Coalition.org website. Martin Luther King Coalition.org website, where Iris Rowley will be speaking tomorrow at 12 noon. So that's going to be great. But Music Hall is where they normally have it, but because of COVID, Music Hall is closed down. Okay, so it's interactive. And then Dayton will have their Martin Luther King Jr. Celebration March, which is Monday, and it begins at 9:30 at the Drew Health Center on 3rd Street, and they will march across the new 3rd Street Bridge downtown. The march will end on the campus of Sinclair College, and there will be a short program that will follow. That program will be outside. So you can pick up the march at the Drew Health Center tomorrow morning beginning at 9:30, and they'll march over to Sinclair College across that new 3rd Street Bridge. There are other King events happening tomorrow. The Robert Sonny Hill Jr. Community Center in Middletown, they're having a special program, and you're invited to that. Um, Declaration of Unity tomorrow at Westchester Township. So if you just go on Facebook, your community, Google it, they will tell you what all is going on. But you have two big events in Cincinnati as well as in Dayton, Ohio. A shout out going to Cincinnati Bengals. What about those Bengals? Oh, the Bengals beat the Raiders yesterday, 26-19, in the AFC wild card matchup that ended Cincinnati's 31-year run without a postseason victory. That's back in the day when I used to be a real Bengals fan, yeah. But now that's all over. They're back into the winning again. But the fourth-seeded Cincinnati Bengals won't know their next opponent in the NFL playoff until after Sunday night's game between the Kansas City Chiefs and the Pittsburgh Steelers, and then they'll just keep on winning, and they'll make it to the Super Bowl, won't they? Yes, they will. I'm thinking positive for them on that one as well. Again, once again, welcome to Straight Talk Live with Edna Howell-Parrish. I am so happy to be here this morning, and for our guests too. Live with Dr. Trish Verner. That's who our guest is. We actually know a lot about Trish Verner. We'll tell you about her as well. And we talked about what it's like to know your family's history and how important your family's history is to you. And how important of a role DNA plays. Dr. Trish believes that everybody needs to know their family history. Dr. Trish Verner is a wife. She's a mother, psychologist, and ordained minister. She's a motivator. She's an entrepreneur and committed to life's changes. She created a YouTube channel to inspire others to live their best life. And she posts inspirational stories about ancestry, DNA, and family content. Every week she's got something new on there. And I discovered her for just by being on YouTube and just searching. And then I looked up one day I was on her channel and I saw Freddie Red, Stephen Bissett, who we had on not too long ago. And Freddie was telling about his story and his DNA and ancestry and having been adopted. And his parents told him he was adopted, you know, but little did he know he found out a lot about his family history. So let's welcome our guest who uncovers a lot of family secrets. And maybe you have one too. Before we bring her on, good morning, everybody. Charity Monique Green, Rise and Shine, Straight Talk Community. Gladys joins us today to all of the beautiful Sunday morning people. Patricia Rogers, good morning, Patricia. Brother Anthony, like and share family, he says, Brenda Early, good day, good who day morning. Hey, you're right. Good who day morning with the Bengals. And Randy Waddell, greetings. and Brother Anthony. Blessed Sunday morning. And as you're checking in this morning, we're so glad to have you and welcoming to our guest, the one and only Dr. Trish Verner. Good morning, Dr. Trish.
Good morning.
How are you?
I am doing well.
I like that smile.
Thank you.
It's accented with the beautiful lipstick and
Yeah,
beautiful eyes. Where you get those eyes from? Where'd they come from? Where the eyes come from?
it's so funny because for years people asked me that so much. And it got me questioning, do I look like anyone in my family? Because it seemed like to me that especially my dad's side of the family would ask that, right? And if you're a child and you're hearing someone on your dad's side of the family saying, where did you get your looks from? It could really make you have some questions. So anyway, to make a long story short, I discovered a picture of my great grandmother, my maternal mother's mother, and I look just like her. I have her eyes, I have her face, and it just answered a lot of things, So
To let you know you look good, Brother Anthony says, the red against the blue is popping, he says. Dr. Trish was born in the projects, she says, where her grandmother raised 5 children alone. There were 3 generations in one home. And you say you shared a room with your mom,
mm-hmm.
your aunt,
Mm-hmm.
and your older brother. How
Yes.
about that?
Yeah, it was a house full, but we
Yeah.
had so much love and, we were just a very close family. So as a child, I didn't realize that we had anything missing, right? Everything just seemed normal to me. And having a bunch of family around, that's just something that felt great as a kid growing up. It takes a village to raise a child.
Yes.
So and we're still close today, and I thank God for that.
I can relate to that. I have, it was 9 of us in our family, and mom and dad had their room, and then we all shared 2 bedrooms. So it was probably 3 of us sisters sleeping in one bed and 3 in another, and my brothers. So growing up, we didn't know. We didn't know we were poor. We just had a good house, a good time, and
Mm-hmm.
loved each other, and still are that way today. You
Amen.
you became a mom at an early age. You had 2 children, but that did
Mm-hmm.
not stop you. You went on, and you made some major accomplishments. Share that with us.
Yeah. So for those of us who, are come from church, I didn't grow up in church, but I joined when I was a very young woman. And one thing I learned was about generational curses, right? And it's just something that continually repeats in your family. So in a video a few months ago, I was talking to my grandmother about this, and she mentioned, I was a young mom, your mom was a young mom, her other daughter was a young mom. We were all teenage mothers. And then I repeated that cycle. So I did have 2 children by the time I was 18 years old. And one of the things that my mom came to me and said, you know what, we need to break this cycle. And she said, whatever I need to do to help you break this cycle, let's do it. So she supported me like 1000%. I had the baby and she's like, you know what, we're going to raise these children together because I don't want you dropping out of school. My mother didn't complete high school. She didn't graduate high school. She later on went and got her GED and she didn't go to college. And that had been something that was recycling in our family. So she was just adamant that I was not going to follow that. And she did. She helped me with my children. She helped me financially. She helped be my motivator. And I went on and got many degrees because of my mother and other mentors and people who came along and said, you know what, we don't want you sacrificing your destiny. You are a young mom, but it takes a village and we're going to make sure you get this done.
Amazing. Now, you're a psychologist. You're a minister. You're a blogger. what does all this lead to? Have you decided what you want to really do when you grow up?
Well, I don't know if we ever really decide what we want to do, right? I am a believer in I follow wherever the spirit leads me. And I really believe that we can maybe work in different avenues throughout our lives. Like I may be this at one point in my life, and then God will move me over into this area because this is needed. And everything before me prepared me for this moment, right? I think a lot of times if we put ourselves in a box and say, okay, I'm only this, I think we'll miss out so much on what God has for us and on fulfilling our destiny and our purpose. Our purpose isn't just one thing, right?
Yes.
We can accomplish many things in life. And I think along the way, if we're open to it, God will lead us to many great places. So I'm open, wherever he takes me, I'm all for it.
You are a child of God. I want to talk about some places God has led you. I want to welcome Stebbin Speed this morning. TC, good morning. How are you doing? Brother Anthony, again, he said the red and the blue is popping. Good morning to Joyce. Thank you for joining us this morning. As you're listening, I want you all to start thinking about your families and secrets from your family DNA, your family history, or just unique things about your family that you notice that runs through generations. How you look, the color of your hair,
Mm-hmm.
just things that you might be interested in. You can call in if you want to, or you can also check in on Facebook, and that'll be a unique thing for you to do as well. Now, God's led you some unique places. Now, He has gifted you, I'll say, with a beautiful family and a husband. And how did that happen? Were you looking for a husband? Did you want to get married?
Well, okay. So was I looking for a husband? I wanted to be married, yes, for sure. Was I looking in the traditional sense, the way some people go out and maybe every weekend, No, I wasn't doing that. I really believed that at the right moment, God would bring along the right person for me. I'm big on destiny and purpose. And I feel like, well, if God called me to this, then he's going to bring along someone who complements my purpose, right? So the funny thing is, I live in Georgia. I've been here for several years now, I think like 14, but I'm not originally from Georgia. I was living in California. I'm not originally from there either. I grew up in the Midwest. But anyway, and I had my first lady, who happens to be a mentor to me. She gave me a prophetic word one day, and she was like, your husband is not in California. And she was like, I see him in Georgia. So, and I was very well established in California. I had a good career. I had my own home. I was driving a nice car. I was raising my 2 kids, and I'm like, do I really want to sacrifice all this to go look for, this man that God says, hey, you can marry this man? And long story short, I did, because I really believed, okay, well, if God wants me to go in that direction, he will add everything else back to me, right? As long as I'm obedient. I met my husband, and I had gotten a prophetic word about what he was going to look like, how tall he was, everything. I was already a minister at that point. And one of the things in my prophetic word was, he's not going to know God very well. He hasn't been saved very long. And I was like, now, Lord, that is not what I asked for. But anyway, to make a long story short, everything was exactly like that. And we got married, and we complement each other so well. One thing I want to say, though, is when I say I was single, I was really single. Some people think I'm crazy when I say this, but for 10 years, I didn't even talk to a man on the phone. I didn't date, I wasn't, doing all that secret stuff that some people in church do, as far as, they live one way and then they want to do other stuff. that's not me. And especially since I had 2 young children, I didn't want to bring that around my children. And if I had them here, they would tell you, mommy didn't do that. You know, they didn't have men in and out of my home and things like that. So the fact that when I actually did bring someone around my family and my friends and my children, they were like, well, this had to be serious, you know. Hey, this must be a God thing because we've never known her to do that. So we're both ministers now. He actually got ordained, and yeah, it's just really wonderful. We really complement each other well.
So now you are a family of 7.
We are a
Started
family
out
of
with
7.
2, and your family started to grow. Wow.
Yeah, we're a blended family. So he had 2 children, and before we met, and I also had my 2. And then we decided to have 2 together. So, but only 5 of us are in the household at the moment. That's a whole nother story. But we do have one that's, you know, hasn't quite joined our family yet, but we're praying about that.
Excellent. Well, you know, as you're listening this morning and thinking about some of the things and some of the myths in our community, like she said, she was telling and sharing that people thought she would not be successful in life because she
Mhm.
had 2 children prior to getting married, but that myth was dispelled. Can you think
Right.
about something that your family or in your family's history that your mother might have told you that we're going to stop this curse? Like she said, her mom said. So her mom helped her along her way and helped her to get through college and became a doctor. Now, so it's something that your parents have maybe told you about your family, or something you learned about your family, or learned about your looks. One thing you said, you would dispel the myth about black fathers. Now we've heard about black fathers and the myths that they say. I'm not even going to repeat it. But what did you learn?
You know, one of the things that really bothered me was whenever I would go out and on social media or even in public in general, there was so much negativity when it comes to Black men and their children. And I wanted to show a different picture because my reality wasn't like that. My parents are still married. Okay. My parents have, well, you know, they've been together well over 45 years. So, and I grew up with my dad there in the household. They got married after I was a little bit older, but my dad was already always there, and he's my biological father. And, you know, and I had grandparents around, grandfathers, uncles, and I would see all of them taking care of their families and their children. And, you know, it's offensive to say, hey, Black men don't take care of their children. Black men don't love their children. I think that's very overplayed. And I wanted just to show something else, another story. So I did do a video on that on my channel because that just is not my experience. Not to mention where I go to church, we have a lot of Black men there leading their families, you know, loving their children, and their story should be told. I really just, you know, I'm very defensive when it comes to Black issues like that. And, you know, and I really just got tired of hearing it. So I wanted to just put another story out there.
Excellent. Have you been a father to children you married into a ready-made family, as they say? I want to hear your experiences about that. That would be interesting to find out if you have that. So you could check in with us and let me know. We'd like to hear about that as well. Some of the stories that you list on Life with Dr. Trish Verner on your YouTube channel, some of them are so interesting. You know, I want to talk about some other people, but one of your daughters has red hair. So people
Mm-hmm.
say, "Oh, well, her daddy must have red hair. Your husband must
Right,
have red hair." That's what people would say, but that's not
right.
true. What'd you
No.
find out?
Well, so my husband has black hair like I do. And so the funny story is she's our last child, right? We had one other child together and she came out with black hair. And now his father does have red hair before it went white. Actually, he's older now. So, but I had told them, I said, wouldn't it be funny if our last child has red hair? And they were like, oh, that's not possible. That's not going to happen. And the reason why is because both sides of the family have to carry that gene in order to have a redhead child. You can't just come from one relative, right? So you need to have that running in both sides. And I don't think they believe that it ran on my side of the family. And so when this child came out, very pale with red hair, it was just really quiet in the delivery room. They're like, okay, are we going to have an issue with this black man thinking his wife, how that goes.
Yeah.
But then my husband was like, hey, she looks just like dad. But anyway, I discovered a lot about my own family. We have several redheads in my family that went back several generations, and just because it doesn't show in recent generations, that doesn't mean you don't carry the gene. You could very well carry the gene and it's there waiting for you to meet someone else who carries the gene, and then you can have a child with recessive traits.
Now, I'm going to take a break. And when we come back, the question I want to ask you about, how do you get into finding out about people's DNA? Is that something that is part of what you do? If people were listening and they wanted to find out information that they would give you, want to find out how you actually help people. And we'll be back after this. This morning, our sponsor is Renew Community Church. This edition of Straight Talk Live is sponsored by renewcommunitychurch.org, where you can learn how to graciously move away from negative people who bring down your positive energy. Now, at 11:45 this morning on YouTube, check out Renew Community Church live stream. At 11:45 this morning on Facebook.com /Cincy, CINCI, Renew, RENEW. And you can learn today about the 9 steps to a happy life. Learn how to graciously move away from the negative people who bring down your positive energy. It's a new year. And Renew Community Church has a free ebook for you and live coaching with life coach Charlie Winburn. Again, you can learn the 9 steps to a happy life in addition, and learn how to graciously move away from the negative people who bring down your positive energy. 11:45 on YouTube, Renew Community Church Live, and 11:45 this morning on Facebook.com /CINCI Renew. Get a free ebook and coaching live this morning with Charlie Winburn at renewcommunitychurch.org. And now back to Straight Talk Live with me, Edna Howell-Parrish, and my guest, Dr. Trish Verner. Be sure to like and share our show this morning, as we ask you to do every morning. That helps to increase our ability to stay here for the rest of 2022. Wouldn't tell you if that wasn't true. Good morning, Jerome Anderson. He says, good morning, everyone. And Stephen Speed. Good morning, Stephen. And again, TC checking in with us this morning. Now, how did you find out, and when did you start doing DNA testing, or I'm not the testing itself, but doing DNA checking and using it for your family?
I've always been interested in DNA. I'm one of those in the family who's always interested in whose parents, who was related to whomever or whatever. Mm-hmm. And I was always fascinated with DNA. I think the very first test I did was of myself because I wanted to know more about me. And then I started convincing family members to do it. And sometimes that's a hard thing to do, especially if your family members are older. They're like, what are they going to do with our DNA? Are they going to sell it? Are they going to, what's going to happen? Will the police come and raid us? It's just a bunch of, and I can completely understand, because we come from a culture of people where things are suspicious to us just because of our backgrounds and the way, we came to be. So we don't always just welcome everything. It's good to ask questions. So I just started testing my family. I tested my dad, because I didn't want that hanging over there. Well, you don't look like your dad, that type of thing. And then I just tested everyone in my household. I wanted to understand more about the red hair and other features that we had. And it just went from there. And I think one of my biggest videos even today is where we discussed my daughter's red hair and where it might have come from. And people just seem to really be fascinated with that. I didn't expect it to blow up the way that it did. And I think it's because everyone is in search of more about themselves, their identity. They want to have that connection, so that they can say, hey, my life matters. Here is where I came from. And I think that's important in order to really feel content with yourself. So a lot of people are able to relate to that story because they want things to make sense in their own lives. So from there, I started featuring other people's stories, adoption stories. I feature stories where, just one I did recently, a young lady discovered that her dad really wasn't her dad after he passed away. And even more so, and this was in the UK, and even more so, she was told that she was white. And she, just from looking at her, you can tell that she's not, but her mother really wanted her to believe that. So it really impacted how she saw herself. So I think that's just it. People really want to connect with where they came from and understanding that.
You say you created that channel to inspire other people to live their best lives, and you put these inspirational stories on, and apparently people like it. It's working for them, and apparently because you got a good following of people. Um, you did your DNA, had your DNA tested just for you. We won't go through the whole family, but did you find anything unique that you thought was interesting?
Well, I expected to see other races in there just because the history of the United States, right?
Mm-hmm.
Almost all Black Americans are mixed with something. And I think what was unique about my situation is I saw a substantial amount of Irish and Scottish DNA as opposed to, English DNA. And it really took me on another journey to understand that more. And one of the things I discovered is in Missouri, where I'm from, there were several Irish slave owners, and I don't think we talk about that a lot. We think, okay, the Irish weren't slave owners, right? But everybody's story can be different, and that just happened to be a part of my story. So that was unique. And on my husband's side, that was a whole other can of worms when we're talking about family secrets, because what we realize is that his paternal grandfather, who they said was his paternal grandfather, could not have been. And we're on a search to understand who he was, right? Or if he's still alive, who he is.
Interesting. I know I'm going to reach back here and get a book. I have a cousin that I discovered last March, and she has this book. Her name is Jo Spencer. Now, my family is from Eastern Kentucky, in Appalachian, in the mountains. And so um, my dad is from a mixed race family, but Jo Spencer, she wrote a lot of books on slavery, a lot of books on Kentucky. So her book, we just got it back, and I got it recently. But she wanted to know about slavery in Eastern Kentucky, where the poor mountain people lived. You say Irish people didn't own slaves, but my cousin Joe, girlfriend, found out a lot about slave owners in Kentucky, where the poor people live, really poor people, and they had a lot of land back there, had a lot of farms, and a lot of people in those 4 counties that she used as her testing ground, they owned slaves. But a lot of
Yes.
people back there in the mountains lived together, loved each other, married,
Mm-hmm.
and DNA, it's all their evidence in my families and my dad's family, and it's just amazing. And my sister had our DNA done while we still had a brother living, so the girls, most of the girls are still in our family. We found out a lot of interesting things too. Although we knew a lot because we had lots of pictures, we knew a lot
Mm-hmm.
always, but we found out like you, 21% Irish, Scottish, Wales, but then we had also a lot more of African from our
Right.
grandfather, my father's father, who was African, and then he married somebody, my grandmother, who was white. So I mean, it's interesting because it is what it is,
It
but it
is what
doesn't
it
make
is.
yeah, it doesn't make me hate anybody or not like
Mm-hmm.
people. But when you were little, you asked your mom, well, why is
Right.
our family look like a rainbow, colors?
Mm-hmm.
And she said, well, it's just how you are. They just didn't know a lot. But are you finding
Right.
people to say that? Well, parents just wouldn't share information, or they keep the secrets.
Oh my gosh. Every day, people are coming out with those stories
Hurt
that
feelings.
what they thought or what they were told, what their parents told them, they're uncovering that it wasn't the case. And that's unfortunate for when I think about it. And the reason why I say that is because I know everyone wants to keep their own personal story, to themselves. But when we start having children and we're creating lineages, uh, it becomes not just our own story, but it's their story, right? I don't think it's fair to say, I'm just going to bury my story here. No one's ever going to find out the truth. It's going to die when I die, because it leaves people with a missing part of their identity. And just like the story I'm featuring now, she had years of counseling over this, because to be told you're one thing for decades, and then to uncover that's not the truth, or even more so, I think the betrayal is that she realized her mother had lied to her. And that can be a humongous betrayal, because the person who is supposed to be committed to you for life, you realize has done a huge betrayal of trust. And then it becomes, can you ever trust that person again? And
Hmm.
then not only that, because if you can't trust your own mother, you begin to question every other relationship you have. Can I trust them? And it can lead to all sorts of things: broken relationships, divorce, problems in the relationship with your own children. I don't think when people make a decision to hide something that they're really looking at the bigger picture and the effects that it could have.
Good morning, El Grio says, which testing company did the both of us use? What company did you use?
Well, I've used several, because I've used Ancestry DNA, which I actually probably is at the top of my list, just because they have the biggest database of users. So you can
Hmm.
match with several other people and find out a lot of information, and you can really build your tree. I really like 23andMe as well. I've done several other, My Heritage, I've done that.
Hmm.
And any DNA test out there, I'm willing to try. And it's just because sometimes you might connect to different people, because not everyone takes the same test. And then they all have different algorithms, right? They won't all show the same percentages if you're looking for admixtures and things like that. So in my personal opinion, the more you test, the more you might find out.
Okay. And I think my sister had ours done, so she's listening. So you can let us know, Joyce, what company. I think it was 23 and Me. Um, we'll see. She's listening. Good morning to Veronica Goodman Fox. Good morning, Veronica. How are you today? Um, El Grio says those are the ones that I have used also, he says. So, and I'm sure I hear from my sister, she'll tell you. And I think she did it while there was a sale. Sometimes they have sales. But
Yeah.
do you trust these companies? Do you think they really know? Oh, Joyce, she said Ancestry DNA is who she used for ours. Um, and so they have sales. Some people say they don't trust it.
Yeah. I think you have to have a full understanding of what they're able to do. First of all, DNA will never lie, right?
Okay.
They, as far as can they match you to people who share the same DNA with you? Absolutely. This is why people who never knew a parent, they're discovering their mother, their birth mothers, their birth fathers, their uncles, sisters, aunts, cousins, whatever, all the time through these DNA tests, because DNA is what it is. I think a lot of distrust comes when we start talking about admixtures and percentages of different places we may have descended from. And those are going to be estimates. And the reason why is because what they're ultimately doing, they're analyzing your DNA against people who currently live there.
Mhm.
And so these people who currently live there, they have parents who are there and great grandparents from that area, as etc. But what they're doing is they're saying, okay, do we have similar DNA? And we're looking back thousands, sometimes generations or 1,000 years. So there, of course, there are going to be limitations. They can only
Yeah.
estimate.
Wow. So everybody said in our family, I always say, well, your sister, she got long hair down to her waist. And y'all must have Indian in your family. So we always say, yeah, we got a lot of Indian. When we check, yeah, one for us, the girls, we had 1% Indian. My brother, he didn't have any Indian at all.
Mm-hmm.
But he had Great Britain where we didn't have any of that. So I mean, this is broken down, but it's so funny how we got Indian in our family. Well, no, you don't. El
Yeah.
Grio says a lot of adoptees have been using Ancestry for a couple of decades. He says he's had 15 family members tested, and FTNDNA is one
Mm-hmm.
though. Do you understand
Family
that?
tree DNA.
Yes, repeat that.
Family tree DNA.
Okay, so it's family tree DNA. Thank you. We appreciate you calling and for sharing that. What about people that are white that want to be black? Now, that's the story about Rachel Dolezal, who was in the news a couple years ago. She was
Mhm.
even the president of an NAACP in the city she lived in. She wore braids. Sometimes she had afros. That's so interesting. I know you did a story on her, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
Black passing is one thing, but white passing to be black.
Yeah, so when I did her story, one of the things, I discovered just in my research, and a lot of times I do these stories not just because, I want to dig in their background, it's because the people request them, right? If I get a lot of requests on a particular topic, I will dig into it more. And so she did actually take a DNA test. The thing about it is, according to her, initially she said that she saw some African percentages. So when she said when she called the testing company to inquire about it, they said, no, that's not what that meant. You're 100% European. So that's why she hasn't released those results, right? So her thing is she's saying that the testing company may have changed some things or what have you. But I'm thinking they're probably pretty accurate. Her parents actually said that they were European. And, an interesting thing that I saw in response to that video that I did is some people felt like she didn't do any harm, and they are okay. And when I say some people, I'm talking about some Black people said that, hey, if she wants to pass for Black, let her. And I think for other people, the problem comes in when you're using it maybe to your advantage, right? it's more than just her passing for Black. She actually went and said that she was getting harassed for being Black, right? She said she was getting hate mail. She had police cases open concerning it. So it was a whole other issue. She lied and said that a particular Black man was her real father. So she took it to another level, right?
Oh
So
man, wow. That is so interesting. Well, people that who had it has been found out that they are that they have it always a true story about they say one drop of Black blood makes you Black, right? So
mhm,
for years people had talked about it, but J. Edgar Hoover, who was former head of the FBI for years, he has Black cousins who know the story, and they were sworn to secrecy, not to share it. He's one. People say,
mhm.
"What?" Yeah, J. Edgar Hoover, Dwight Eisenhower. I have read stories about him, and his mother is African American.
Yeah.
So those are stories that they have kept hidden, and I don't know how they felt about that. Nobody, I mean, and people knew it. Some people just they kept it covered up.
I recently did a story on Clark Gable, and what I am finding is that pretty much straight down the line, white people will say, "Hey, he didn't have any Black in." They get kind of offended when you say that these white-looking um, actors actually have some Black DNA. They get offended with that. And then Black people are pretty much straight down the middle. Oh, you can look at them and tell, there's Black there, So a lot of times, even today, people say, well, race isn't an issue. Why do we make a big deal about it? But the fact that people constantly bring it up really shows to me that it's a bigger issue than what a lot of times we want to say it is. I think ideally we really would like to see it go away and no longer be an issue, but unfortunately it still is. So, as far as white passing, I think there are several rumors out there about a lot of different people. I know for J. Edgar Hoover, hey, I don't want to claim him anyway, so that's one I would hope wasn't true, but it probably is.
Interesting. Kid from Kid and Play, the light guy with the eraser top haircut. He shares his story about growing up in a biracial family, grandparents. A lot of people have these stories and they're coming up, but it doesn't make you any less who you are or less proud
Hmm.
of being yourself or being African American. You are who you are. And it's so
Right.
important for people to realize that. And the more you know, the more you grow. You do.
Yes,
You do.
absolutely.
You do. You really do. Jeannie Mulholland, good morning, Jeannie. Thank you for joining us today. El Grio says most of these, I'm going to use this word, I'll spell it for you, Dr. Trish. AUTOSOMAL. Tests
Autosomal, yes.
only go back 8 generations. They
Hmm.
test the surface DNA. There are companies that do a full genome.
Yeah.
So
Those
8 generations. Wow. Hmm.
Yeah, they're really limited right now. I mean, they're advancing every day, right? I mean, even with Ancestry DNA, I'm constantly, maybe twice per year, I would say, getting notifications saying, "Hey, we updated everything. You might want to check your admixtures." I'm paraphrasing here, but basically, they're always, even as they add more people to their database as well, they're able to become more accurate. So when you take these tests, just understand that, they're not going to give you your complete identity, but especially I think for Black Americans, it will give you more than what we had, right? Because
Oh, yeah.
we don't know anything, as far as where we came from or those cultures and different things like that. So,
Indeed. Indeed. Pamela Kinney says, I've used Ancestry and plan to use 23andMe. My sister has researched my mother's side of the family since the 70s. That side of the family can be traced back to before 1776 with accurate information. She says, I know my grandmother was born on the Cherokee Reservation in North Carolina, and it is documented in DC in the National Archives. court documents, and some history books. That's
Yeah.
interesting. Yeah. Native Americans, man, I mean, we got a dirty deal in African Americans in terms of our situation with slavery, but Native Americans, I mean, they just got kicked and picked right out, you know.
Yeah, they did. It's
Yeah.
unfortunate. You know, it's funny she mentioned finding a book. When you're on this journey, you might find things about your family that you never even knew. I discovered that there was a book written about my maternal side of the family during slavery. And to make a long story short, a grandson of a white slave owner wrote a book about my family who owned land after slavery ended. They owned land. They were business owners. They were well established in the community. And anyway, one of the stories he told in there is about my great 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 grandmother, who to him appeared to be Native American. And when I tested myself, I didn't see any Native American ancestry. But I am fortunate enough to have one living grandparent, and she tested and she did have a small percentage of Native American ancestry. But it probably was so many generations that's why I don't have any. I believe my mother also had a small percentage, and some of my cousins as well. You know, my guess is that ancestor of mine was more likely mixed with Native American and not full Native American ancestry. But with that, I want to say too, a lot of times, you know, we think what might be Native American might actually be European. You know, that
Exactly.
long hair or whatever that we're seeing, you know, that lighter skin.
Hmm.
Almost all Black Americans have European DNA, but we all don't have Native American.
I know in doing in research for this is my dad's side of the family, and I have aunts that had, I mean, really had hair way down, you know, long to their knees. These people had long, straight hair, and we just said definitely that's Indian, but we don't think so because you know they were mixed with Irish and the whole nine yards. And on my mother's side, now one thing that they have done is a very good job of tracing the family roots. I have a cousin who's passed away now, but he's my mom's first cousin, and Kenneth Combs, researcher forever, long before we even had computers, and so their family history is intact. I mean, it goes way back to the 1700s, and so it's all there. And their dad's side too. And we learned that their name was actually their last name was Hogg, Hoggg. And the Hogs didn't, because that was given to them by their slave owners. And the Hogs didn't like the name Hogg, so they changed their name to Combs. So our
Mm,
family's name is Combs on my mom's side. And then my cousin Byron Fox, I should say. You know, they've done so much research, so it leaves a good legacy for our family. But searching my dad's history, man, it's just like when somebody black marries somebody white, then they get shot and killed because they married somebody white. It
wow.
just it leaves a family blank because my dad never
Yes.
knew his dad. He never knew
Mm,
him. Parents were married, but they never knew him. So I think for those people that are involved in family reunions, and it's so important to get in touch with your family and know your family. I'm so
I
glad that I got
agree.
involved in my family reunion.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, it's just really fascinating, even with the stories that you might find out there, you know, and uncover. I know one of the things I'm attempting to do now is to trace my maternal line as far as possible. And I've come to a roadblock. I've gotten back to the late 1700s, and I just can't find any information past that point, you know.
Yeah,
Hopefully it will, you know, I'll get more information maybe along the way, but I'm really hoping so, because I really would like to know. But sometimes you get to those blocks, right? You take it as far as you can, and then you just have to wait and be patient, you know.
right. And keeping family photos. I have a cousin, and well, I have many cousins, but one cousin in particular. You look at that family's how they look, this father, and they look like their just like their great grandparents. Some of the kids favor, but these people go way back. These are two, maybe three generations back, and they look amazingly like these people. And it's
Mm-hmm.
DNA. I just love it. Holly says
Right.
she has an ancestry DNA kit. Thanks for checking in, Holly. She said, but she hasn't sent it back in. So soon she will know some of her history. That's great. That's great. Um, is it true that you have to have a male in your family in order to be able to trace some of the DNA?
No. Okay. So it depends on what you're trying to do, right?
Okay.
So if you're trying to determine, like, for instance, what's called the Y DNA, you want to
Right.
trace your paternal line. As we know, women, we don't carry the Y chromosome. So, and tracing the Y DNA, you can go all the way back to the very beginning, right? But here's the thing, you have to have someone in your paternal line do that. So for me, I did have my dad tested. So I was able to discover what his line, where his line originated from. And it makes sense with what my DNA test shows as well, because I mentioned that it showed I have a lot of Irish and Scottish ancestry. Well, when I
Hmm.
trace his Y DNA back, it goes back to Ireland,
Yes.
which simply means that, especially during the slave trade, right? At some point in time, there was an Irishman
Yes.
who
Yes.
fathered my ancestors.
Yes.
And that's one of the things I do want to bring up, because a lot of times I think people are not aware that I believe it's something like, I don't want to get the percentages wrong, but I believe it's 25 to 30% of Black American men actually have European Y DNA. So that means that, ultimately their paternal line didn't start from Africa. So, and it's just, it could be a result of the slave trade, in some cases, in a few situations, maybe it's not. And it's because, like you mentioned in your family, there was interracial couples,
Oh
but
yeah.
a lot of that comes from the unfortunate part of, having enslaved ancestors.
Right. And it wasn't always rape. I know there was rape and pillage, but it
Right.
wasn't always rape. It was not.
Yeah.
El Grio says, replying to El Grio, that's where FTDNA comes in. And then he says HAPLO group,
The haplogroup. Yes.
haplogroup, right. So
Uh-huh.
he
So
kind of knows a little bit, doesn't he?
yeah, he does. You can tell he was doing this, you know. Yeah, the
Yeah.
haplogroup I discovered for my family, my father's paternal haplogroup comes from Ireland. And I know for me, I really wanted that African connection, not to say that we're not Black. Of course we're Black.
Oh yeah, we
But
are.
so I did my maternal haplogroup, and thankfully it did go back to Africa. So I was glad to see that.
Hmm. I know for ours, for the girls, we have 1% Native American, but we have Mali, North Africa, Senegal, Scandinavia, Nigeria, Ivory Coast, Ghana, Cameroon, Congo, Benin, Togo, Ireland, Scotland, Wales. And then
Hmm.
my brother's has Iberian Peninsula, Benin, Togo, East Europe, Mali, Great Britain, Nigeria, Ireland, Scotland, Wales, Scandinavia, Caucasus, West Europe, and then the most Ivory Coast, Ghana. That's likely where my granddaddy came from, my daddy's father. And then Cameroon,
Right.
Congo, 17%. So it's just amazing how these numbers go. So I
Yeah.
think that for all of us, that it's important to be positive about this. I mean, we do have some issues that we're still dealing with, but it doesn't mean
Hmm.
that we can't go back and look in our family histories, and the thing that we find out, we don't have to be surprised about it.
Yeah, and you mentioned that not everything is rape, and it's true, because we also discovered my husband's paternal haplogroup goes back to Eastern Europe. And that is one way we were able to figure out that who he was told was his grandfather couldn't have been his grandfather. And actually, my husband he has over 40% European ancestry, which he was shocked, I think, to
Yeah.
see, because he was told that all of his generations were Black. Well, now we're pretty sure that his grandfather had to be from Eastern Europe. And that's where we're searching. Obviously, his grandfather wasn't from the slavery days, though, because he would have been born probably in the 30s, 1930s. His father was born in the 1950s.
Mhm.
So like you mentioned, not everything is rape. So, but there are family secrets out there, right?
Yes, they are. Yes, there are. So I'm going to keep up with you. You're on YouTube, uh, Life with Dr. Trish Verner. You can keep up with her too. Check her out. And any question that you may have, I'm sure she'll try to help you and find an answer. Right or
Thank
wrong?
you for having me. I
Am
really
I right or
appreciate
am I
it.
wrong? You help them?
Absolutely. If you
Okay.
come to me, I'm all about helping, So,
Okay.
yes,
And
ma'am.
you see her name on the screen, Dr. Trish, TrishVerner, psychologist. So you can find out who she is a little bit more on YouTube, and she's on Facebook too. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. And again, Straight Talk Live this morning has been brought to you by Renew Community Church. Now, this morning you can learn the 9 steps for a happy life. Learn how to graciously move away from negative people who bring down your positive energy. The 9 steps to a happy life. This morning, 11:45 a.m. Sunday morning masterclass. Charlie Winburn, Dr. Charlie Winburn. Master Education, Dr. Charlie Winburn. And Renew Community Church live stream this morning, 11:45. Facebook.com/CINCI Renew. Get a free ebook and coaching. RenewCommunityChurch.org is their website. Live this morning, 11:45. Learn how to get away from those negative people who bring you down. Learn about the 9 steps to a happy life. You want to be happy? Check them out this morning. Thank you all for listening to Straight Talk Live. I really appreciate you. It's really been a great morning. We thank you so much, Brother Anthony, good family. Iena Orokum. I am so sorry. Ineaororkuma. Good talk, she says. Thank you, sister. I appreciate you. Brenda Early, great show. Thank you all for listening. Don't forget, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Day is tomorrow. And check out some of the marches and some of the events going on. Thank you all for listening as we talk again on another Sunday. I'm Edna Howell-Parrish.